Hello YouTube, this is Mahadev the Thunder Wizard, and today I am going to reveal to you the false information surrounding the myth of extraterrestrial abduction of humans. So first let me say, before I go any further, do alien abductions occur? Yes, absolutely. Are alien abductions done by extraterrestrial beings? No, they are not. So this is the assumption. And the problem is that if you don't have a correct assumption, this is just critical thinking, if you don't have a correct assumption, then all of the conclusions that you make are going to be at best inaccurate, confused, incomplete, if not outright completely false. The problem is that because most humans do not have personal experience with actual extraterrestrials, it is extremely easy to conflate the two. Conflation is one of my favorite words. Conflation is different from confusion. Confusion is when I've confused this for a pair of sunglasses. No, I'm confused. Conflation is when you take two separate things and merge them together as one. So there are huge numbers of people who are honestly interested in extraterrestrial phenomenon who have understandably conflated human-created alien abduction scenarios with actual extraterrestrials. And this has resulted in people having varying beliefs in the good aliens versus the bad aliens. And we need to align with the good aliens to fight against the bad aliens. And you'll read if you go looking for ET information or aliens, you will find no shortage of modern mythology out there about how there's been wars among the aliens and all this other stuff, and therefore you will believe that there are these evil, demonic aliens out there seeking to do things like abduct you and all kinds of other experiment on you. And some of the evil aliens have aligned with humans, and some of the good aliens have aligned with humans, and blah blah. This is all nonsense. This is all conflation. It is all projection. It is all fantasy. Some of it is based in actual phenomenon. Like I said, the alien abduction phenomenon is real, but it is done by humans, not by ETs. And I'm going to prove it to you. So I want you to take all of your assumptions, your beliefs. I want you to put them aside for just a second. You can pick them up later. I'm not trying to take away your beliefs. You can come back to your beliefs. If I don't do my job of convincing you, feel free to pick up your beliefs and hold on to them if you want. If you are willing to look at objective reasoning and critical thinking, I believe that you will come to the same conclusion that I have, which is that actual extraterrestrials have zero interest in doing anything harmful to you, even if that's your experience that something harmful is happening to you. They have zero interest in that. The only thing they're interested in is helping you to be happier, healthier, and more evolved. That's it. And again, you're free to pick up your beliefs afterwards. I'll do my best to share with you the evidence to prove that. So let me also just say, my beliefs about extraterrestrials comes from extensive personal experience. I have been in, this is going to sound just as nuts as it could possibly sound, but I have been in constant communication with extraterrestrial beings for the past 4 months on a daily basis. And I've never been taken up physically in a ship. None of them have ever beamed down in front of me physically. None of the things that you would expect that happens with extraterrestrials from the movies has happened with me. It has, I'll explain in the end, more of what it really is, and it is a really amazing thing. And I have some proof. If you've seen some of my videos, I do have some proof that I'm interacting with some kind of paranormal phenomenon. You can decide whether or not they're extraterrestrials. I'm convinced that they are. Let's continue. So I'm going to prove to you that alien abductions are in fact real, but they are done by human beings. The first account I'm going to share with you is the most convincing. Truth is, we don't need to go beyond this first account to prove what I'm saying, that alien abductions are human-based and they have nothing to do with actual extraterrestrials. So before I do that, let me ask you. First, if you believe that extraterrestrials exist, and if you believe that extraterrestrials come and visit Earth from planets and galaxies light years away from us, then you have to assume that they are extremely technologically advanced. Are we in agreement there? That is my assumption. One of the reasons I didn't believe in aliens, 6 months ago, is because after looking at the science, I realized that there are no habitable planets anywhere near Earth, and the closest possible habitable planets are light years away from us, which means that if they were going at the speed of light, it would take them hundreds, thousands, millions of years to get to us. So that alone made me go, well, there might be even very advanced aliens, but if they have mastered, going the speed of light, they still can't get to us. They would die in the process. So aliens may exist, but they can't get to us because I was trusting our understanding of science. So we're in agreement. If extraterrestrials are visiting Earth, they're coming from places that are so far away that it means that the technology that they have means that they can go faster than the speed of light. If that's the case, they are so advanced from a scientific perspective, we can't even begin to fathom them. We're in agreement there, right? Great. So now we're on a good starting assumption. So let me ask you a question before we go any further, and this question is directly related to proving that alien abductions are in fact not extraterrestrial, they are human. So we agree that extraterrestrials, their technology has got to be so far advanced, so much further advanced than humans are, that we can't even begin to comprehend them. Which means that things, not only space travel, but it is a logical assumption that all of the rest of their technology having to do with medicine, surgery, would have to be so far advanced that we wouldn't even begin to understand them. Right? Hold on to that thought for a moment. Because the thing is, people don't think things through. They operate emotionally. And because they operate emotionally, based out of fear or fantasy or whatever else, they don't think things through. So if you get rid of your fear and your fantasy, what I'm about to share with you, if you think it through, will make you go, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Something else is going on here. So let me ask you this question. Since we are so incredibly far behind whatever extraterrestrials have in their technology, their knowledge, just their knowledge of everything, not only space and time, science, but medicine, their knowledge has got to be just hugely out there, right? All right, so let me ask you this. Since we're so far behind them, let me ask you, how do we humans determine if a female human is pregnant or not? Is there an invasive procedure? Do we have to operate on them? Do we have to put anything into a woman's body physically? Do we have to cut them open, stick needles in them? Do we have to do anything like that to determine if a human female is pregnant. No. You can do it at home. You can go buy the test at the local pharmacy, and just a little bit of, a little bit of bodily fluids onto a test strip, and you'll know. There's absolutely zero invasive procedure involved. And again, this is coming from humans. We've been doing this for a long time, and we are so far behind aliens we can't even begin to imagine it. So does it make sense that if an alien wanted to find out if a human being was pregnant, if we can do it without being invasive, it's probably likely that they can do it with even less work. We actually have to, put some kind of, in this case, bodily fluid, urine, onto a test strip. They could probably do it with some kind of instant scan, I would imagine. They could probably do it from miles away. Oh, that human female is pregnant. Yep, there's a human male and there's a pregnant human female, right? That makes sense, right? That's not, if they can travel hundreds of thousands of light years in the blink of an eye to get to Earth, they can probably tell if a human is pregnant or not without having to even interact with them. Are we in agreement? That's probably the case. Certainly we can assume, without a doubt, that there's not going to be any kind of invasive surgical procedure, right? That's just common sense. We're using our critical thinking skills. Because does it make sense that they would be these brilliant navigators of space and time, but would be absolutely complete, utter idiots when it came to medical procedures? That doesn't make sense. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't make sense to me. So now I'm going to prove to you that alien abductions are human, and they've been human derived this whole time. The first well-known alien abduction case was the Betty and Barney Hill case. It happened when I was, I think, a year old or less. I believe it was in 1964. So in 1964, Betty and Barney Hill were abducted by extraterrestrials. Now, as you find out their story, you actually find out that there are humans involved, that they actually interact with humans before they go on to this spaceship and are abducted. And then they are operated on, and sexual fluids are taken from the man. And a very invasive medical procedure is done to Betty Hill to determine if she is pregnant. And in her account, she is on a table on an alien ship, and there is a gray, one of these guys. There is a gray alien, looks something like that, hovering over her, and he pulls out this huge needle. And she becomes very afraid. And he says, "Don't worry, this won't hurt. We just need to find out if you are pregnant." And he inserts this huge, scary needle into her belly button and takes out some amniotic fluid. And it did hurt her. She said she screamed out, in pain. And this supposed gray alien simply moved his hand like in Star Wars and said, "Your pain is gone." Right? So this being had enough power to move his hand and make the pain go away, but didn't have the medical knowledge to know that all he had to do was get some urine or some other, he probably could, I guess now they can do it all kinds of ways. Blood, just some kind of fluid out of her body, and then they would know immediately. But no, these highly advanced beings that can travel thousands, millions of light years in the blink of an eye, who can defy gravity, who can send telepathic thoughts to you, they didn't have the first clue how to figure out whether or not she was pregnant. They were such complete bumbling idiots. They didn't have the ability that we have now, and we are so far behind them now, we know all you have to do is just piss on a little strip and you can figure out if somebody's pregnant. They couldn't figure that part out, but they could travel, they could defy the laws of gravity, and they could travel hundreds or thousands or millions of light years in the blink of an eye, from Zeta Reticuli, no less. Impossible to get there without going faster than the speed of light, but they couldn't figure out how to, just the most invasive way possible. They're going to stick a giant needle into her amniotic sac and pull out some fluid. Now, it gets better, because 10 years later, I believe it was in the mid-70s, a very famous, I don't remember the name of it, but you can look it up. Easily Google it and look it up. A very famous magazine article about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case. And they said, this proves that they are extraterrestrials, because we didn't know back in 1964 how to use a needle to test if you were pregnant, which means that in 1974, if you wanted to find out if someone was pregnant, you had to stick a big giant needle into their belly button. And so because that had developed in those 10 years of time, think about it. Aliens supposedly come, they stick a needle in her belly button, pull out amniotic fluid to find out if she's, I think it's amniotic fluid, but they have to stick a needle into her navel to find out if she's pregnant or not. And then 10 years later, humans come up with it. So that proves that aliens are more advanced than us, because they knew how to do this very painful, invasive procedure to figure out if a woman is pregnant. And now we know how to do it. So that proves it, right? No, what it proves is that humans were experimenting on her. That human medical technology had gotten to the point where they were trying to see if they could determine a woman's pregnancy by sticking a giant needle in them. It also served them because if we right now, I'm giving you my assumption, which you can choose to accept or reject, but my assumption is that these false alien abductions serve multiple purposes. And among them is to frighten you so that you will not want to have actual contact with actual extraterrestrials. You will be frightened of them, because the thought of interacting with an extraterrestrial means that they're going to stick needles in you and probe you anally and do all kinds of other things is going to kind of put you off at the idea of interacting with ETs. And I can tell you from personal experience that if you do interact with ETs, one of the end result is that you are going to become far more aware of your reality, and you will become far more independent. You will become far more able to come up with your own conclusions, master your own life. These things do not bode well if you happen to be a group of very powerful rich people who want to take over the earth and control the human population. The last thing you want is for these humans to interact with actual extraterrestrials, because then they're going to be much harder to control. So the way to fend that off is to create your own aliens that show up and do all kinds of things to frighten you, and at the same time give you this feeling that you're interacting and your mind is expanding and you're understanding the universe better. It is typical false flag operation to try and get ahead of something they know is coming. So what I'm saying to you, the assumption is that human beings, even back in 1964, knew that human beings were going to evolve and that we were going to begin to start having our own personal interactions with the other residents of our universe, which happen to be highly advanced extraterrestrial beings, but that the actual experience of extraterrestrials is far, far different from what they want you to believe. So let's talk about what they want you to believe. And again, I'm only going by other people's accounts and using our critical thinking skills, because we're not emotionally attached one way or another to what things are or are not. We are going to see this is definitely alien abductions are a human created thing. They have nothing to do with actual extraterrestrials. All right. So the next person I want to talk about is probably the most well-known ET alien researcher, journalist, Linda Moulton Howe. Now, I do not know this woman. I don't know anything about her. I assume she's a wonderful person. I believe that it's very likely that she is sincere, that she's devoted her life to something that she believes is very important. And I think she is, based on what I've listened to her, read from her, she probably is only interested in everybody's happiness. She wants to bring out the truth. But I believe that she is also an unwitting agent of disinformation. One of the things that bothers me about Linda Moulton Howe is that the vast majority of the accounts that she shares come from ex-military, even ex-military whistleblowers. And I'm going to share with you one account that she shared that, to me, if, in other words, again, everybody operates from assumptions and all of us have emotional attachments. This is just basic critical thinking. You can't know what the truth is if you have an incorrect assumption, if you go into something with a predetermined assumption about what something is, and if you have an emotional attachment to the outcome. It is virtually impossible you will be able to know what the truth is. More importantly, if you have an attachment to the outcome, if you have an incorrect assumption, you can be easily manipulated. Hence, that's why I say, even though she's a reporter or a journalist, I believe that she is an unwitting agent of misinformation, and that she's been fed lies by the government. But they come to her in the form of ex-military whistleblowers who, for some reason, have this ability to share with her all of these secrets, but don't end up dead the next day for some reason. In any case, one of the accounts that she talked about is apparently she shared that this came from an ex-military whistleblower who was deep in the military alien program. This is part of the seduction. They tell you half-truths. So they lead you into their lies with truth. Half-truths, which is that the government has secret alien programs to reverse engineer and create technology based on recovered alien craft. Right? So when you hear that, it sounds like, oh, she's giving out secrets the government doesn't want you to know. But since the government knows that you're going to figure this out, they're going to give out false information, false flag information. They're going to knowingly conflate, and they're going to knowingly give you false information in the hopes of being able to further their ability to control you. Let me give you an example. The instance she shares, the end result of it when you hear it, is that it will make you afraid of aliens on a physical level, emotional level, spiritual level. But it's designed to look like, here I am, a journalist, and I'm giving you this truth that's being hidden from you about aliens. So government bad. Ooh, so that way she looks like us. Anyway, here it is. According to her, from some ex-military person, there was a scenario where, for some reason, I can't figure out why they would do this, but there was an officer, I believe in the Air Force, some military officer, and there was an enlisted person. So they took one of the enlisted persons, if I'm remembering this correctly, and I may have some of the details a little bit off, but the basic part is true. The most important part I'm going to get to is the way I heard And so they're going to get this enlisted person, and this enlisted person is being briefed, saying, you are going to meet with an extraterrestrial. Now, it is going to be very intense, and this extraterrestrial is going to communicate with you telepathically. And it's going to be so intense that it's going to knock you out. It's going to put you unconscious, and it's going to put you flat on your ass. And furthermore, and this is the really silly part that anybody listening to it wouldn't go, what? But if you have an emotional attachment to believe the narrative that the government is giving you, you're not going to go, what? You're going to go, So what he goes on to say is, now, this extraterrestrial is going to walk out of his craft, but on his planet, he's used to levitating. So in order not to frighten you, he's not going to levitate. He's going to walk on the ground. But because he's used to levitating, he can't walk very well in our gravity. So when he walks, he's going to look like a robot. He's going to be jerking around and not walking very well at all. Then he's going to walk until he's, a few meters ahead of you. And then he's going to throw his mental projection into your brain, which is going to knock you flat on your ass. And nobody's asking why. Why are they choosing to do this to an enlisted person? And why is the officer the one why did they have this elaborate thing worked out with the aliens ahead of time? That the aliens somehow are able to communicate without knocking everybody flat on their ass, that they want to do this to somebody. And that the military says, oh, okay, we'll get this guy. We'll get this enlisted guy to come and do it for you. None of this makes any sense unless it's an experiment. It's an experiment with their new technology. They're going to test out their new alien robot who's either remotely controlled or is an AI or whatever else. And inside this alien robot made by humans, there is going to be some technology where they're going to see if they can telepathically put information into a human brain. Now, they already know from previous experiments that this knocks people flat on their ass. What they really want to figure out is what will happen to the person if this exact scenario were to happen, a spaceship were to land and some robot were to come out and telepathically do this to the average human. What would it be like? It is obviously an experiment, a psychological, technological, and physical experiment to see what the effects are. Because if it works out for them, then they can do it on a mass scale so that people will have the belief that the government wants them to have, which is that evil aliens are coming to explode your mind. So sure enough, the exact same thing happens that the guy said was going to happen, obviously, because they've already experimented with the robot. But what they don't know is what's going to happen when they telepathically use this technology to dump a bunch of information into somebody's head. Now, bear in mind, these are aliens. The assumption we're led to believe is that these are aliens who have the ability to travel millions of light years and defy gravity, but for some reason they haven't mastered the ability to communicate telepathically. They're such complete idiots that even when they try and communicate a little bit, it's so much for the human brain that it knocks you flat on your ass, which is exactly what happened. The guy said that the alien came out and waddled out in front of him and then telepathically sent this information, which did. It knocked him out, knocked him flat on his ass. He was unconscious. He woke up in some recovery room somewhere and said that the amount of information was so much that it was like an entire giant dictionary full of information that was dumped into his head at one time. Again, the assumption is that these aliens are such idiots that even though they can travel millions of light years and defy the laws of gravity, they're incapable of communicating. They're so advanced they can't even fucking communicate. They can't in any way limit or control the amount of information they give out. They're just total bumbling idiots. Now, what makes more sense? That aliens who can travel millions of light years are complete bumbling idiots when it comes to communicating telepathically? Or that human beings are just learning how to use technology to send telepathic information, and they have to experiment in order to figure it out? What makes most sense to you? Obviously, you know what I think. All right, let's continue. Travis Walton, another huge alien abductee, and their movie, Fire in the Sky, etc., etc. Now, Travis Walton goes all over the country, or at least he did, speaking, all that kind of stuff. He seems like a perfectly nice guy. I have no reason to think that he's lying. I don't think he's making anything up. I think that what he says happened is exactly what happened to him. And what he says happened to him is that he was out with his fellow workers, and they were chopping down trees because they worked in the forest, and some alien showed up, alien craft showed up, and there was this light that he went and walked under the ship, and some light hit him and knocked him out. The other guys got scared and ran like cockroaches, and then he was taken aboard the ship, and he woke up, and there were these alien beings there that, I think this might even be from that movie, alien beings that looked like that. And he woke up and he hit one of them, because they were standing, when he woke up, they were perched over him, looking at him. And he was understandably traumatized and frightened. And he batted one away, and he said that he hit it and knocked it back. But when he talks about it, he says it didn't feel like anything. This isn't the only person who said this. There has been multiple accounts that I've listened to, people, who've shared their accounts, not personally, but, videotaped accounts of people who say that these beings, when they take them aboard their ships, if they touch them, like if they touch their arm, one guy said specifically he touched their arm of this one supposed female alien, and said that it didn't feel alive. It felt like a suit. It felt unreal. It's because it was a robot. This same guy said that when he was led onto the ship, he was led onto the ship by robots. Okay, so this is a theme. Whitley Strieber, in his account, even talks about weird flying robots. So what you see with the abduction scenario is typical thing. You have these alien beings that show up. They move like robots. They don't move like living creatures. They have telepathic abilities. They also employ robots. And they're also complete, total idiots when it comes to medical procedures. They have to do very invasive medical procedures. For some reason, they have to climb up your rear end. They always want to take sexual fluids. There is usually lots of forced sex happening with females, really frightening, horrible, abusive events. People are being abducted without their permission, which is abusive, violation of your own physical space. They are subjected to medical experiments, but the medical experiments are done by idiots who don't have the first clue. They don't have any technology to know how to do anything. Many of these people have implants put in them, but the implants are so crude that they end up sticking out, and sometimes they come out, or you're able to remove them. They're just these big clunky things. Again, these are beings who have the ability to fly supposedly millions of light years to get here, and yet they haven't figured out a way to put an implant that we can do much better at. Human beings now can put implants in you, the size of a grain of rice or smaller. But these aliens who are so advanced, they have to stick these weird little things in you that leave scars in you and bumps, and that you can see it in x-rays and MRIs, and does all kinds of weird things. But what sounds more realistic to you? That the government is experimenting with implants and they don't want you to know that they have this ability. So what do? They abduct you. They make you think that aliens are doing it. So that way you don't know that the government is experimenting on ways to put implants in you. And now we know the technology that humans have for implants is far more advanced than these supposed aliens were doing 10 or 20 years ago. All right, so the last thing, Whitley Strieber, he was the guy that introduced me to this. The movie Communion, I remember watching it and enjoying it. It frightened the hell out of me, but I enjoyed it. It was just because it was so interesting. And I find him to be a very good writer, and I find him to be very intelligent. I think he's very honest. I believe that he's sincere. And I also think that he has been a government abductee for decades. And they chose him because he's a writer. And they knew that he would write books and movies about it. Maybe, who knows? And so do I think that he is a willing agent of disinformation? Most likely not. I think he is an unwilling trauma victim, because one of the things that trauma victims do, especially when you're in a trauma situation you can't escape, in his case, repeated abductions of himself and his family, you end up becoming part of it, and you end up making excuses, and you end up justifying it. Not only that, he spiritualized it. Now let me be very clear. I don't give a crap how powerful, not even God. I left Christianity not because I didn't believe in it. I fully believed in it. I walked away from Christianity because I was not going to worship a deity that was abusive, period. End of story. And Jehovah was a narcissistic abuser. I've explained it in many of my videos. And because of that, I walked away from it. Not because I didn't believe. So I don't care if aliens turned out to be far more powerful than me, far more spiritually advanced, but they didn't have the decency to respect my physical boundaries, my psychological boundaries. I would not have any interest in them, and I would go to war with them. So when I hear Whitley Strieber's account of continued abductions against his will, where he is put into states of hypnagogic inability to move, where his son, his toddler son, is taken hostage on a regular basis and experimented on and frightened, it's very hard for me to then listen to him spiritualize about it as he does now. He's got a podcast and he spiritualizes about aliens and how it was a very frightening experience, but and explaining it away into some spiritual woo-woo nonsense world. Bottom line is that he was abused repeatedly. He's been traumatized much of his life, perhaps his whole life, by these human abductions. I don't know about the rest of his experiences. It would be very easy to conflate the two. Having myself had extensive interactions with extraterrestrials, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know that it wasn't an extension of the same experience. The psychic connections, the dreams, the communications, the phenomenon that you see from actual ETs could easily be conflated with the government-created scenario. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if ETs would then go, and maybe do, go to these people who've been abused and abducted by government forces and sought to do damage control and sought healing, because my experience of them is that they're very interested in healing. So when Whitley Strieber talks about his continued psychic communications with extraterrestrials, that might be a real thing. And he's conflated the two, which would be a very normal human thing to do. The last thing I want to talk to you about, and again, Whitley Strieber, in his experience, he talks about being in these operating rooms, and the way he describes it, he doesn't describe it as though he's inside a ship of beings who are highly technologically advanced. He describes a very bumbling human type of scenario because the operating rooms are smelly, they're dirty, there's all kinds of implements there, sharp implements used to do all of their, their medical experiments. Again, it doesn't line up unless you are being led to believe that there are powerful evil beings out there who, being like demons, they live in filth and it doesn't bother them. It shows a representation of a sociopath. Serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer, there's a thing on Netflix on Jeffrey Dahmer. The guy lived in filth. Serial killers, it happens all the time. They'll bury bodies inside until the place just reeks of death, and they're completely clueless of it. And all of the neighbors will come, it really stinks in there, and they'll be like, yeah, well, I had some bad roast beef the other night. They're completely, totally sociopathic and have no awareness of anybody else's experience. But we're supposed to be led to believe that these extremely advanced beings who have the ability to travel millions of light years don't have the ability to clean up after themselves, and they don't have the ability to do any kind of medical experiments without leaving dirty tools and scalpels and things lying around, and it smells bad. Does that sound like ETs, or does it sound like humans, psychopathic humans bumbling in their attempts to experiment while making you believe it's these guys? All right, here's the last thing I want to say. The last thing I want to say about my last little bit of evidence about alien abductions. So I read on a previous video, I quoted from an article that I read and gave out the person's name, so I'm just going by memory now. But what I remember reading and sharing on that video was that there are many people who have woken up during these supposed alien abductions to find out that they're not aliens at all. They're actually military. And many people have woken up in these military bases thinking that they've been abducted by aliens. And in one case, this woman was in her home, and she there was a huge flash of light, like blinding flash of light outside at night. And then she found herself going into a catatonic state where she was kind of going in and out of consciousness and wasn't able to move. And she saw these beings coming in through the walls and through the windows and coming towards her. And then she heard some kind of weird technological glitching sound. And then all of a sudden, these guys transformed and became human beings in military fatigues. And then she started waking up from the catatonic state and found that in her home, there were these military guys, and that there was a helicopter outside. And that these guys did something like this to stay put, and they backed off because they knew that it wasn't working. And that's just that explains exactly to me what is really going on. You can put all of the pieces together. I don't need to explain it for you. But it's human done, not aliens. But if you don't know any better, like I didn't know any better 6 months ago, I wouldn't have known the difference, and I was frightened, understandably. And I was not interested in interacting with these sociopathic, bumbling beings that were interested in, seemingly clueless about just basic manners. They just don't understand the idea of, hey, we'd like to experiment on you. Because here's another truth. If aliens really were interested in experimenting on humans, there is no shortage of human beings that would volunteer for that. I wouldn't be one of them. But there are so many people out there that would want to experience aliens that if they came and, hey, listen, from another planet, I know I'm a little frightening, but we'd love to do some experimenting on humans. We want to figure out human anatomy, and if we follow one of the false narratives, we actually had this problem and we need to create, human alien hybrids. Do you have any idea how many people would sign up for that? There are so many new age nutcases out there that would love to be the parents of alien hybrids. They wouldn't need to abduct you. They would just come and knock on your door. Oh, you don't want it? Okay. And if they're so psychically advanced, all they have to do is psychically probe to see who wants it. And then they can just go, hey, what do you think? They'd be a lot better off having willing subjects than having to put you in some kind of a hypnagogic trance and taking you against your will and traumatizing you. It doesn't make sense. If that's what they wanted to do, it's easier to do it the simple way than to make it difficult. Unless you are a human deep state government operation, and your job is to not only do a psychological operation on human beings to frighten the hell out of them so that you don't want to interact with ETs, but it's also a really great way to hide all of your experimentation that you want to do on humans without letting people know the government is experimenting on you. All right. Now, let's get to the next question now. So I'm still in my critical thinking mode here, and I want to invite you to follow along with me in my critical thinking path. So we can assume that if extraterrestrials are visiting Earth, they are coming from hundreds or thousands or millions of light years away, and so they are extremely powerful. It would also be easy to assume that they're also extremely spiritually powerful, that they have power to manipulate reality, they have power to break the laws of science and physics. They must be very spiritually powerful. They could easily be confused for powerful spiritual beings, demigods, and deities. Are we in agreement on that? That, I think, is a fair assessment. If they have the ability to, if they have the technology to get here, millions of light years away, they probably have a lot of other powers that would seem like magic to us, right? All right. So we can assume that these beings are extremely powerful. So, my next question to you, are there such things as good aliens versus evil aliens? This is something I run into all the time, and this again is an understandable belief. I would have believed this myself had I not had the experiences that I've had for the past 4 months. And for somebody who is afraid, if you're afraid of the devil, if you're afraid of archons, if you're afraid of demons, again, this is called conflation. I used to be an exorcist, so I can tell you that demons actually exist. That there are spirit beings that exist, that are psychopathic, that are extremely powerful and extremely destructive. So I can tell you that these beings exist. So it's easy to come to the conclusion that there's an evil demon being that has the ability. So it's very easy to project that onto powerful aliens because we don't know them. You don't know anything about them. They're different. They're alien, right? So it's easy to just assume that There might be good aliens or bad aliens. We don't know what their intentions are. This is the main theme in all movies. Somebody says, we don't know what their intentions are. We have to assume that they're here to consume us and destroy us because that's what we would do to lesser beings. Happens all the time on Earth. What makes us different that they are not going to come and conquer us? But this is an assumption. And again, assumptions, if you start off with an incorrect assumption, then all of your conclusions are going to be at best incomplete, most likely completely false, inaccurate. So the assumption that first off, the assumption that spiritually powerful beings are predatory in nature or have the ability to be predatory is an assumption. So I have another assumption, but it's based on my personal interaction. My personal interaction has proven to me, without a doubt, that beings of higher spiritual power are incapable of being predatory. I'm going to repeat myself. I have proven to myself through extensive energetic, spiritual, psychic interaction with these beings who are extremely powerful, that it is impossible for any higher dimensional being to attain that powerful state and be predatory. Because in order to have a predatory intent, you must believe that you are separate from your prey. Let me repeat myself. In order to have a predatory intent, you must believe that you are spiritually, energetically separate from your prey. So, if you live in 3 dimensions, I do, we treat other beings as prey. Unless you're a vegan, people go out and hunt. I just came from the beach and I watched people fishing. And they pulled fish out of the ocean and the fish were flopping on the sand and they were suffocating. And I thought to myself, how sad for that fish. And then I thought, wow, all the fish that are killed on a daily basis, people eat. I myself eat fish. That's how those fish die. And I started to feel bad for the fish and started wondering, is there a way that I can eat necessary nutrients without eating fish? So we're predatory. You can't hunt another animal. You can't conquer somebody else. You can't physically harm somebody else. You can't sexually abuse, mentally abuse. You cannot do anything harmful with intent to another being unless you see them as separate from you. Right? What I've found is that once you get to higher dimensions, all of the separation disappears. You become connected to everything. I've personally experienced it, and the experience I've had with these beings, my personal experience with them, is that every single interaction that they have, every single message that they give me, every single dream that they've given me, every single communication that they've given to me, every single bit of energy that they put into my body has only been loving, empowering, deeply compassionate. And when I have been taken to those higher dimensional stages, what ends up happening is that I feel connected to every molecule around me. And I am filled with an intense love for everything. And I also see it as being an extension of myself. And there was a time when they lifted me up. They told me they were going to do it. They said, we're going to take you to the 5D level. And for about a day, maybe half a day, because it's very hard to come back to 3D after you've been in that. But for at least half a day, I was in this 5D state. And I'm walking around, and every single being that I came across, a bird, a fish in the water, a person walking down the beach, their dog, I saw the essence of them, I felt them, and I felt like they were part of me. And my feeling was pure compassion. I wanted to take care of everything. I wanted every single being I encountered to be blissfully happy and to know that they were loved. Now, I didn't go around hugging people. I didn't go do that. But I sent loving energy to I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. I couldn't hold it back. The love was pouring out of me. And that was just a glimpse. I wasn't even completely in 5D, because if I was, I wouldn't be physically visible to a 3D. So I have, based on my experience, that it is absolutely physically impossible for a higher dimensional being to have any predatory intent, because if they were capable of predatory intent, they would immediately drop out of higher dimension and they'd lose all of their power. They wouldn't have any spiritual power whatsoever. What you are being led to believe through this intentional conflation between human abduction alien experiences and actual extraterrestrials, the end result of this conscious conflation and this conscious conflation is so that you won't be able to tell the difference. The elites in this world know that they cannot prevent you from becoming aware that there are other civilizations out there. They also know that it's impossible for them to prevent you from becoming aware that these beings dwell and can function at higher dimensional levels. But what they can do is that they can, if allowed to, they can seduce you and lie to you with these false assumptions that aliens are extremely powerful and that they are at worst predatory and evil, or at best just kind of sociopathic and clueless to human boundaries. So hopefully I've made my point. Hopefully you can follow that. I got stimulated to say this because, I'm interested in connecting with other people that have had this experience. And I keep running into all of these, ET Facebook groups run by seemingly sincere people who probably have zero personal experience. And all they do is they sit around and talk about all of these abduction scenarios. And again, they're trying to come to this conclusion that abduction scenarios are not bad. It's actually a good spiritual thing. I wanted to, again, say that's not how it works. ETs do not abduct. And if you want to prove it to yourself, I invite you to do CE5 protocols, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols. You can Google it, CE5, the letter C, the letter E, the number 5 protocol. Do it yourself. You might have a frightening experience, but I guarantee you will not be abducted. And the only reason it would be frightening is because it's beyond your understanding of reality. But if you're able to make an emotional or psychological, energetic, spiritual connection with these beings, you will find out immediately that their only intention is to help you in the same way that if you come from a loving family, your father, your sister, your brother, your uncle, they're only interested in your well-being. And they miss you and they want to interact with you. From their perspective, we are their family. We are their relatives, and they love us. And, you'll find if you do the work that it goes even far beyond that these beings, many of them have been humans before in previous lifetimes. Many of them know you from past lives, and many of them remember their relationships with you that go back eons. The last thing that is going on in their mind is how they can physically abduct you and take you on their ship and do experiments on you. In the same way that your loving cousin or brother or mother or grandfather, the last thing that would be on their mind would be to abduct you and take you to their nursing home and do experiments on you. It doesn't make any sense. And it saddens me and frustrates me, but I understand people aren't educated in this, and I get it. So, I'm not saying this isn't a religion for me. I'm not saying that everybody should go out and do CE5 and connect with extraterrestrial. I'm not saying that. If you want to, do it. If it frightens you, don't do it. But definitely do not buy into the nonsense that is being shoved down your throat by well-meaning agents of disinformation who are telling you that alien abductions are coming from extraterrestrials, that somehow alien abductions are also kind of spiritual, and that I have an open mind because I don't think alien abductions are bad. No, alien abductions are bad. They are destructive. They are psychopathic. They are predatory. Any being who comes up to you and takes you by force is a predatory, narcissistic, psychopathic abuser. And I want to disavow this notion, which is understandable, that, well, they have different, aliens have different cultures. They have different understandings about protocol and what is polite, and what is impolite for humans may not be impolite for them. And it's just not true. The truth is that consciousness is the same throughout the universe. When humans become more conscious, they become more compassionate, they become more loving, they become more non-judgmental, they want only to be helpful. And that is the truth about consciousness throughout the universe. Even if they live millions of light years away and they have a completely different culture, the one thing that they share with you is the desire to not be physically harmed, not to be psychologically harmed or spiritually harmed. And they're smart enough to know that other people, no matter where they come from, they don't want that either. And because they live on that higher dimensional plane, as I said before, it's impossible for them to not psychically understand your limitations. They can see what your limitations are, and they have no interest in harming them. So, anyway, that's my spiel. I'll probably circle around back to this, but just wanted to put that out there. And again, this is just my thing that's happening with me right now. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I invite everybody who's interested to go and find out for themselves. But I'm not at all saying that this is a religion. You need to go and connect with extraterrestrials to be a spiritual person or a happy person. Just live your life, be happy, do what makes you happy. And these beings are only interested in that same thing. To the extent that we are able to have more open interaction with them, it'll become abundantly clear that they actually are good neighbors, that they care about us, and all they're interested in is helping us be happier and healthier if they can, just like your next door neighbor. If they're nice to you and you need help, they'll be there to help you. And if not, and you need privacy, they're happy to leave you alone. It's just common sense. More advanced beings are going to have more common sense, not less. All right, I'm done. Thanks for listening, and I will look forward to seeing you all very soon. Let's see, how do I want to go out on this?